My wife said if I couldn't handle her ex staying overnight, that was my insecurity. So I let him sleep in our guest room, made a breakfast, smiled, and played the perfect host. What she didn't know is wife was already on her way, and that was just the beginning. By the time she realized I wasn't passive, I was already 10 steps ahead. Some men explode. I calculated. My name's Bradley Harlow. I'm 45 years old, and for the past 9 years, I've been a plant manager at Henderson Auto Parts, a mid-sized manufacturing facility outside Columbus, Ohio. I run a tight ship, overseeing 200 employees, maintaining production quotas, and making sure safety protocols are followed to the letter. It's demanding work, but it's honest. I take pride in what I do. I've built a career on consistency, discipline, and showing up every single day. Those same principles, I thought, applied to my marriage. Monica, my wife of 7 years, works as a marketing coordinator for a regional tech firm. She's sharp, organized, and always knows how to present things in the best light. That skill, I'd learned, extended beyond her professional life. We met at a community fundraiser. She had Evan with her son from her first marriage. The kid was 10 back then, quiet but observant. I liked that about him. Over the years, I've tried to be the steady presence he needed. I taught him how to change a tire, how to throw a football properly, how to stand up for himself without throwing punches. He calls me Brad, not Dad, and that's fine. I've never pushed it. Respect is earned, not demanded. It was a Thursday evening when Monica dropped the bomb. I'd just gotten home from the plant, still in my work boots, when she appeared in the kitchen doorway with that look, the one where her jaws set just a little too tight, like she's already prepared for an argument. "Nathan's coming to town this weekend," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine. She didn't offer me one. Nathan Pierce, her ex-boyfriend from college, the guy she mentioned maybe 3 times in 7 years, always in passing, always with that nostalgic tone people use when they're talking about someone who supposedly doesn't matter anymore. "Okay," I said slowly, setting my keys on the counter. "That's nice. Where's he staying?" She took a sip, eyes fixed on me over the rim of her glass. "Here, in the guest room." The air in the kitchen seemed to shift. I kept my voice level. "You're inviting your ex to stay in our house." "He's just a friend, Bradley," Monica said, her tone sharpening. "If you can't handle my ex staying over, that's your insecurity, not my problem." There it was, the accusation wrapped in condescension, the implication that any objection I raised would mark me as controlling, jealous, weak. It's a tactic I'd seen before, not from her, but from people who wanted to win an argument by making you question yourself instead of answering the question. I didn't bite. "Just not at once." "When's he arriving?" She blinked, clearly surprised I wasn't pushing back. "Saturday afternoon." "All right," I said, and walked out of the kitchen. I heard her call after me, something about being mature, but I was already halfway up the stairs. In that moment, I wasn't angry. I was calculating, because when someone tells you who they are, you should believe them. And Monica had just told me everything I needed to know. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that comes after a sleepless night. I'd spent most of Friday evening in my home office, door closed, going through old bank statements and phone records. Monica thought I was reviewing production reports from the plant. Let her think that. The truth was more methodical. I'd opened a separate checking account 2 months ago, quietly routing my direct deposit into it. Nothing dramatic, just a precaution I'd taken when the late-night texts started. Now I was glad I had. I transferred another chunk from our joint savings, enough to cover 6 months of expenses. If she noticed, she didn't say anything. She was too busy preparing the guest room, fluffing pillows like she was staging a hotel suite. Evan found me in the garage around noon. I was organizing my toolbox, more for the distraction than any real need. "You okay with this?" he asked, leaning against the workbench. At 17, he was nearly my height now, broad-shouldered from the high school football team. He had his mother's eyes, but thankfully not her talent for deception. "With what?" I said, not looking up. Nathan's staying here, Evan said. Mom's acting weird about it, like extra cheerful. It's fake. I set down a socket wrench I'd been holding. What do you think about it? He shrugged, but his jaw tightened. I think it's disrespectful to you, to this house, but she doesn't care what I think. She tell you much about him? I asked. Just that he's some big-shot sales guy, drives a BMW. She showed me his Instagram last week. Evan paused. Brad, if you want me to make this uncomfortable for him, I can. I'm good at being a moody teenager. I almost smiled at that. No, let him come. Let him get comfortable. Evan studied me for a moment. You've got a plan. I've got information, I corrected. Plans come after. He nodded slowly, then pushed off the workbench. For what it's worth, you've been more of a father to me than my biological dad ever was. Whatever happens, I'm on your side. He left before I could respond, but the words hit harder than I expected. This wasn't just about Monica anymore. It was about the kid who called me Brad but looked at me like I hung the moon. I wasn't going to let him watch his mother dismantle his home without consequences. That afternoon, I made a call to Jim Driscoll, an old friend from my Army Reserve days who now ran a private investigation firm. I didn't tell him much, just that I needed surveillance on someone. He didn't ask questions. He just quoted me a price and said he'd have someone on it by Monday. By the time Nathan's silver BMW pulled into our driveway at 4:30, I was ready. Or as ready as any man can be when he's about to welcome his wife's lover into his home with a smile and a handshake. Monica rushed out to greet him before he'd even killed the engine. I watched from the living room window as she threw her arms around him, laughing like she hadn't laughed with me in months. He was tall, well-dressed, confident in that way men are when they've never had to work with their hands. He pulled an overnight bag from the trunk and followed her inside. I met them in the foyer. Nathan extended his hand. You must be Bradley, he said, flashing white teeth. Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it. I shook his hand, firm grip, eye contact, all the performance of sincerity. No problem, I said evenly. Welcome to our home. Monica beamed. Nathan smiled, and I started counting the hours until Sunday morning. Dinner was a performance, and Monica was the lead actress. She'd made roasted chicken, her specialty, the one she only brought out for occasions she deemed important. Nathan sat across from me at the dining table, tie loosened, comfortable in a way that suggested this wasn't his first time in someone else's territory. So, Bradley, Nathan said, cutting into his chicken, Monica tells me you run a manufacturing plant. That must be demanding. It keeps me busy, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. What about you? Sales, right? Regional sales manager for Apex Medical Solutions, he said, leaning back slightly. We supply surgical equipment to hospitals across the Midwest. It's a lot of travel, but the commission structure makes it worthwhile. Monica laughed, touching his arm. Nathan just closed a deal with Cleveland Clinic, $500,000 in orders. Impressive, I said, though I wasn't impressed. I was watching how her hand lingered on his forearm, watching how he leaned toward her when he spoke, like I wasn't even there. Evan sat beside me, silent, pushing food around his plate. He'd barely said 2 words since Nathan arrived. Evan, right? Nathan said, finally acknowledging him. Your mom says you're in a football. What position? Linebacker, Evan muttered, not looking up. Good position. Takes guts to be in the trenches, Nathan said, like he knew anything about football. You planning to play in college? Maybe, Evan said shortly. Monica shot him a look. Evan's being recruited by Ohio State. We're very proud. That's great, Nathan said, but he was already turning back to Monica. Remember that time we drove up to Ann Arbor for the game? What was that, junior year? And they were off, trading stories I wasn't part of, laughing at jokes I didn't understand. I ate in silence, mentally cataloging every touch, every glance, every inside reference. This wasn't just an old friend visiting. This was 2 people reliving something they'd never fully let go of. After dinner, Monica suggested drinks on the back patio. I declined, saying I had paperwork to review. Nathan raised his glass in mock salute. Don't work too hard, man. I went upstairs, but I didn't go to my office. I went to our bedroom and opened Monica's laptop, the one she'd left charging on the nightstand. She'd never changed her password. It was still Evan's birthday. Her email was open. I scrolled through recent messages. Most were work-related, but then I found it, a thread between her and Nathan going back 3 months. Can't wait to see you. It's been too long. I miss you too more than I should. Does he suspect anything? No, he's oblivious. Always has been. I read through 2 months' worth of messages, plans, arrangements, coded language that wasn't really coded at all. They met up twice before this, once in Cincinnati, once in Louisville. Both times she told me she had marketing conferences. I took photos of every message with my phone and I closed the laptop, put it back exactly where I found it, and walked downstairs. They were still on the patio, wine glasses half empty, voices low and intimate. I stood in the doorway watching them through the glass. Monica's head was tilted back laughing. Nathan's hand rested on the arm of her chair, fingers just inches from hers. I turned and went back upstairs. In the guest room, I placed a small voice-activated recorder inside the air vent. Jim had dropped it off that morning while Monica was at work. It would capture everything said in that room for the next 72 hours. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was methodical because anger clouds judgment, and I needed clarity. By the time I went to bed, Monica still hadn't come upstairs. I lay there in the dark listening to the faint sound of laughter drifting up from below, and I started planning tomorrow. I woke at 5:30 the way I always did. Monica's side of the bed was cold. She'd slept in the guest room, or more accurately, she'd stayed in the guest room. The distinction mattered. I showered, dressed, and went downstairs. The house was silent. I made coffee strong and black and sat at the kitchen table with my phone. The voice recorder had transmitted everything to an app. I pulled up the file from last night and listened. 2:15 a.m. Monica's voice slurred slightly from wine. I can't believe he didn't even question this. Nathan's voice, I told you, he's passive, too nice for his own good. Monica laughing softly, I used to think that was attractive. Now it just feels boring. Nathan, you deserve better. You always have. A pause, then sounds I didn't need to hear to understand. I stopped the recording. I sat there for a long moment staring at my coffee. The betrayal should have hurt more. Maybe it would later. Right now I just felt a cold, clear resolve settling in my chest. At 6:30 I heard movement upstairs. Not from the master bedroom, from the guest room. At 7 o'clock I started making breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast. The smell filled the house. Monica appeared first wearing her robe, hair messy, eyes avoiding mine. Morning, she said carefully. Morning, I replied, flipping bacon. Coffee's ready. She poured herself a cup and sat at the table silent. A few minutes later Nathan came down dressed in the same clothes from yesterday, looking far too comfortable. Smells great, he said, sitting across from Monica. I set plates in front of them. Help yourself. We ate in silence. The tension was thick enough to cut, but I kept my expression neutral. Monica kept glancing at me, trying to gauge my mood. Nathan ate like he didn't have a care in the world. Then the doorbell rang. Monica looked up confused. Who would be here this early? I'll get it, I said, setting down my fork. I walked to the front door and opened it. Rachel Pierce stood on my doorstep, blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, dressed in professional slacks and a blazer. She held Nathan's overnight bag in one hand. Good morning, she said, her voice calm but cold. I'm looking for my husband. I stepped aside. He's in the kitchen. Rachel walked past me, heels clicking on the hardwood. I followed her. When she appeared in the kitchen doorway, Nathan's fork clattered against his plate. His face went white. Rachel, he stammered, standing. What are you doing here? Bringing you your bag, she said evenly, setting it on the floor. You left it at our house. Thought you might need it. Monica stared at her, then at Nathan, comprehension slowly dawning. Your wife. Rachel turned to her, and for the first time a hint of emotion broke through. Yes, his wife of 12 years, mother of his 2 children. She looked back at Nathan. Did you forget to mention that part? Nathan opened his mouth but nothing came out. Rachel's gaze settled on me. You knew. I suspected, I said quietly. I confirmed it Friday. She nodded once, a silent acknowledgement between 2 people who'd been played. Then she looked at Monica, who sat frozen, her face pale. He told me he was staying with a college buddy named Mike, Rachel said. Imagine my surprise when his assistant mentioned he'd be in Columbus visiting old friends, plural. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm an elementary school principal. I work with kids all day. I can spot a liar from across a crowded cafeteria. Nathan finally found his voice. Rachel, let me explain. Don't, she cut him off. Just don't. She turned to me. Thank you for the coffee invitation. I hadn't invited her for coffee, but I understood. Anytime. Rachel picked up the bag and handed it to Nathan. You can stay wherever you want tonight, just not our house. She walked to the door, paused, and looked back at Monica. Good luck with him. You're going to need it. The door closed behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Monica stared at Nathan, her face a mixture of shock and betrayal. You're married. He ran his hand through his hair. It's complicated. Get out, I said. My voice was quiet but final. They both looked at me. I repeated myself. Get out of my house, both of you. Nathan grabbed his bag and left without another word. The front door slammed behind him hard enough to rattle the windows. Monica stayed frozen at the table, staring at her untouched breakfast like it held answers. You set this up, she said finally, her voice hollow. I made a phone call, I replied. Rachel deserved to know what her husband was doing. You had no right. I had every right. I cut her off. This is my house. You brought him here. You lied to me for months. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table between us. Want to hear the recording from last night? The one where you call me boring and passive. Her face went white. You recorded us. Voice-activated device in the guest room vent, I said calmly. Legal in Ohio as long as it's my property, which it is. I swiped through my phone. I also have your emails with Nathan. 3 months of planning. Cincinnati, Louisville, both trips you said were marketing conferences. Monica's hands trembled. Bradley, I can explain. Don't bother, I said. I've already filed for divorce. Papers will be served Tuesday. She stood abruptly, chair scraping. You can't just throw away 7 years. I'm not throwing away, you already did. I picked up my coffee mug. You have until Friday to move out. After that, the locks get changed. This is my house too, she said, voice rising. Actually, it's not, I replied. It's in my name. Bought it 2 years before we got married. You'll get whatever the court says you deserve, which given the evidence won't be much. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. The passive, accommodating husband she'd known was gone. What stood in his place was someone who'd spent 3 days preparing for this exact moment. What about Evan? She asked, grasping for leverage. What about him? I said. He's 17, almost 18, old enough to make his own choices about where he wants to live. And based on the conversation I had with him yesterday, I don't think you're going to like his choice. Monica's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, just cold clarity. I gave you everything, she whispered. No, I corrected. I gave you everything. You gave me lies. I walked past her toward the stairs. You've got 4 days. I suggest you start packing. I went up to my office and closed the door. Through the window, I watched her stand in the kitchen for a long moment before finally breaking down, shoulders shaking with sobs. Part of me wanted to feel something, guilt maybe or sadness for what we'd lost, but all I felt was relief. My phone buzzed. A text from Evan. Heard everything from upstairs. I'm staying with you. She made her choice. I texted back. Your choice, not hers. But thank you? Another text came through, this one from Jim Driscoll. Got something else you need to see. Can you meet this afternoon? I replied. 2:00, your office. Whatever it was, I had a feeling it was going to make this divorce even more interesting. Jim Driscoll's office was in a converted warehouse downtown. All exposed brick and industrial lighting. He met me at the door, manila folder in hand, expression grim. You're not going to like this, he said, leading me to his desk. Try me, I replied, sitting down. He opened the folder. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and printed text messages. I did some digging on Nathan Pierce after Friday. Found some interesting connections. He laid out the first photo. Nathan and Monica at a restaurant in Louisville, dated 6 weeks ago. Nothing shocking there, but then he showed me the bank statement. This is from a joint account, Jim said. Opened 4 months ago. Look at the names. Nathan Pierce and Monica Harlow. A joint account. My stomach tightened. How much? I asked. $87,000, Jim said. Most of it transferred from your joint savings account. She moved it in increments small enough that you wouldn't notice. $5,000 here, $3,000 there, spread over 3 months. I stared at the numbers. $87,000. Money I'd saved over years of working 60-hour weeks. Money meant for retirement, for Evan's college fund, stolen and funneled into an account with her lover. There's more, Jim said, pulling out another document. This is a lease agreement signed by both of them for a condo in downtown Cincinnati. Lease starts next month. They've been planning to leave together. The guest room visit wasn't nostalgia or a lapse in judgment. It was a test run. She'd been preparing to exit my life and step into a new one with Nathan, funded by my money. Does his wife know? I asked. About the account? No. About the condo? No. But she's about to. Jim pulled out his phone. I've got copies ready to send to her attorney. Just say the word. I thought about Rachel standing in my kitchen this morning. Dignified, even in betrayal. She deserved to know the full extent of what her husband had done. Send it, I said. Jim nodded and typed out a message. Done. Her lawyer will have it within the hour. I looked at the photographs again. Monica smiling at Nathan over candlelight. The two of them walking hand in hand through Louisville's waterfront. Happy, carefree, spending my money while I worked 12-hour days at the plant. One more thing, Jim said quietly. The signature on the joint account paperwork. The authorization form that required your consent to transfer funds from your savings. He slid another document across the desk. It's forged. That's your signature, but you didn't sign it. I studied it. He was right. Thank you? For the letter. He nodded once. You earned it. That night, I got a text from Rachel Pierce. Nathan moved out. Taking the kids to my parents for a while. Thank you for telling me the truth. I texted back. You deserve to know. Take care of yourself. Her response came a minute later. You too. And for what it's worth, your wife made the biggest mistake of her life. I didn't reply. I just sat there in a quiet house, Evan upstairs studying, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing, even when it cost you everything. 3 weeks into the divorce process, I got a call from a law firm I didn't recognize. Philadelphia area code. Mr. Harlow, my name is Gerald Fitzpatrick. I represent the estate of Thomas Mitchell. Thomas Mitchell, Evan's maternal grandfather, Monica's father. He'd passed away 8 months ago, long before any of this started. I'm aware of Mr. Mitchell, I said carefully. What's this about? I'm calling regarding his will. Specifically, a provision concerning his grandson, Evan. Are you aware that Mr. Mitchell left a substantial inheritance to Evan? I sat up straight. No. Monica never mentioned it. That's concerning, Fitzpatrick said. According to the will, Evan was to receive $450,000 on his 18th birthday, held in trust until then with Monica Mitchell Harlow as trustee. However, we've recently discovered irregularities in the trust account. My stomach dropped. What kind of irregularities? The account was opened in March as directed. By July, $300,000 had been withdrawn. All transactions authorized by the trustee. He paused. Mr. Harlow, did your wife recently make any large purchases or investments? The joint account with Nathan. $87,000 was just what I'd found. The rest had gone somewhere else. I need to speak with my attorney, I said. And Evan needs to know about this. I agree. I'm prepared to file a complaint for breach of fiduciary duty. But given that Evan is still a minor, we'll need your cooperation as a stepfather. After I hung up, I sat there staring at my phone. Monica hadn't just stolen from me. She'd stolen from her own son. $300,000 that his grandfather had left him. Money meant for college, for his future, gone. I called Evan down from his room. Sit down, I said. We need to talk. I told him everything. His face went from confused to shocked to absolutely furious. She stole from me? He asked, voice shaking. From my grandfather's money? It looks that way, I said. The estate attorney is investigating, but the evidence is pretty clear. $300,000 withdrawn over 4 months. That's why she could afford all those trips with Nathan, Evan said slowly. That's why she wasn't worried about money. She was spending my inheritance. I'm sorry, I said. Evan stood abruptly, pacing. No, don't apologize. This isn't on you. He turned to face me. What can we do? The estate attorney wants to file criminal charges. Theft, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. It's serious, Evan. Your mother could go to jail. Good, he said without hesitation. She should. She stole from her own kid to fund an affair with a married man. That's not just wrong, Brad. That's evil. I studied his face, seeing the pain beneath the anger. You sure? Once we go down this road. I'm sure, Evan interrupted. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. I called Gerald Fitzpatrick back. File the complaint. Evan and I will cooperate fully. Understood, he said. Mr. Harlow, I want you to know Thomas specifically mentioned you in a letter attached to his will. He wrote that you were the kind of man he'd hoped his daughter would marry. That you treated his grandson with respect and dignity. He wanted you to know that. I closed my eyes. Thank you for telling me that. That night, Monica's attorney called mine in a panic. Somehow word had gotten out about the trust fund investigation. They were offering full surrender, no contest divorce, immediate return of all remaining funds. Too late. The complaint was already filed. And Evan had already made his statement to the police. The court hearing lasted 3 hours. Monica's attorney he everything. Claims of emotional distress, allegations that I'd been controlling, desperate attempts to paint her as a victim. None of it worked. The judge reviewed the evidence methodically. The forged bank signatures, the joint account with Nathan, the stolen inheritance from Evan's trust fund. When he looked up from the documents, his expression was granite. Mrs. Harlow, he said, I've been on this bench for 19 years. I've seen many difficult divorces, but rarely have I seen such a deliberate, calculated pattern of deception and theft. He set down the papers. The court finds in favor of Mr. Harlow on all counts. Full reimbursement of marital funds, immediate repayment to Evan Mitchell's trust fund, no alimony, no claim on the marital home. Monica sat frozen, her attorney's hand on her arm. Furthermore, the judge continued, given Evan's age and clearly stated preference, custody is awarded to Mr. Harlow. Visitation with Mrs. Harlow will be at Evan's discretion. He looked directly at Monica. You betrayed not only your husband, but your son. That carries consequences. The gavel came down. Monica didn't look at me as she left the courtroom, her mother supporting her on one side, her attorney on the other. Evan waited outside. How did it go? We won, I said. Everything. He hugged me, quick and fierce. Good. Can we get burgers? I'm starving. We ate at his favorite diner, talking about college applications and football scholarships, deliberately avoiding the elephant in the room. But as we were leaving, Evan stopped me. Brad, I need to say something. He took a breath. Thank you for not giving up on me, for showing me what it means to be a man. My grandfather was right about you. Your grandfather? The letter the attorney mentioned. I read it. Grandpa Tom wrote that you were the kind of man he wished my mom had the sense to appreciate, that you treated me like I mattered. Evan's voice broke slightly. He was right. I pulled him into a hug. You've always mattered, Evan, always. 2 weeks later, the criminal charges against Monica were formally filed. Theft, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. Her attorney negotiated a plea deal, 3 years probation, full restitution, and mandatory community service. No jail time, but her reputation was destroyed. Nathan and Rachel's divorce finalized around the same time. I heard through Jim that Nathan had moved to Arizona, trying to escape the fallout. Rachel stayed in Columbus, focusing on her kids and her career. As for me, I threw myself into work and helping Evan prepare for college. Ohio State had offered him a partial scholarship. With the recovered trust fund money, he could afford the rest. Life moved forward, quieter but cleaner, like a wound finally healing. 8 months after the divorce finalized, I met Rachel Pierce for coffee. Not by design, just coincidence. We ended up at the downtown, recognized each other, and she gestured to the empty seat across from her. Small world, she said. Smaller town, I replied, sitting down. We talked easily, two people who'd survived the same storm. She told me about her kids adjusting, about the new routine she'd built. I told her about Evan's acceptance to Ohio State, about the manufacturing plant's expansion. You seem good, Rachel said. Settled. Getting there, I admitted. Some days are harder than others. I know what you mean. She stirred her coffee. My therapist says it takes about a year to really move past something like this, to stop looking over your shoulder waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sounds about right, I said. We exchanged numbers before leaving, promising to stay in touch. No romantic intentions, just mutual respect between survivors. Evan moved into his dorm in late August. I helped him unpack, met his roommate, gave him the standard about studying hard and making good choices. As I was leaving, he walked me to my truck. You going to be okay? He asked. The house is going to be pretty empty. I'll manage, I said. Besides, you're only 2 hours away. I'll visit, he promised. Often. You're stuck with me, Brad. Wouldn't have it any other way. I drove home through afternoon traffic, the truck bed empty now, the house waiting. For the first time in months, that didn't scare me. Empty wasn't the same as lonely. It was just space, waiting to be filled with whatever came next. A year later, I ran into Rachel again, this time at a charity fundraiser. We spent most of the evening talking, and when she suggested dinner the following week, I said yes. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't desperate or rushed. It was just two people who understood loss, who'd rebuilt themselves from the ground up, cautiously exploring what might grow in the spaces they'd cleared. Evan approved, naturally. She's good people, Brad, and you deserve someone who sees that. As for Monica, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved to Cincinnati, working retail, living in a small apartment. The glamorous life she chased with Nathan had evaporated, leaving her with nothing but consequences. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt nothing at all. She was a chapter 1 closed, a lesson learned about trusting actions over words. What I'd gained was worth more than what I'd lost: Evan's respect, my self-respect, and the knowledge that I'd handled the worst moment of my life with dignity and strength. That was enough, more than enough. It was everything.